Hey, Tim Frisch with A Frisch Perspective. That was a really interesting debate the other night, to say the least. And I know a lot of people have been talking about it, discussing it, posting on social media about it. But I thought it was interesting what Jenna Ellis said. And her tweet here says, cable news format debates aren't helping deepen understanding of the wide differences between President Trump and Joe Biden on issues like morality, the role of government, economic prosperity, and our individual rights. And she actually has an article linked here that she wrote at the Daily Wire. Ellis, here's the problem with modern debates. So this was put out today, October 1st, on the Daily Wire. Ellis says, after the 96-minute firestorm that was the first debate between President Trump and Joe Biden, the commentary was predictably partisan. However, both sides seemingly agreed on two things. Chris Wallace was a participant, not a moderator, and the format was bad. While neither of these failures should actually come as a surprise in our modern media era, no one really expressed why. Cable TV segments have completely changed how people process information, and she's saying this as someone who has been on cable news quite a bit. We no longer have an attention span longer than 2-minute videos, and everything must be expressed in talking points and 30 to 45-second quips. This isn't particularly productive to a deep dive into the meat of the issues. If we're honest, most people tuned in to see President Trump take down Joe Biden or vice versa, not to participate in democracy with higher expectations. It was the beginning of the political World Series, and fans tuned in to see their team score. But the final outcome gets lost in a medium that isn't showing the game in a long-form, rational sequence, almost as if each play was strung together in a packaged, out-of-order method or clipped out of context. The one-liners and instant replays immediately turned into merchandising opportunities, and short clips were played on repeat as pundits gave their own 2-minute analysis, based on which team they already preferred. This is the failure of media being too overproduced, and cable news hosts like Wallace thinking their job is to be a newsmaker instead of a facilitator. Rather than allowing Trump and Biden to have a lengthy conversation back and forth, even if there was mudslinging and name-calling included, Wallace attempted to compartmentalize the topics and neatly produce segments, which turned out to be an utter failure. This is because real-life dialogue doesn't work that way. Imagine sitting around your family's Thanksgiving table and hashing out a topic everyone is passionate about, and the head of the table consistently interrupting and demanding, "That's for the next segment." You would never get anywhere and be constantly frustrated that it's not a conversation anymore. It's just a short segment. But that's how the cable news cycle works. If you watch TV with this in mind, you'll immediately see how most shows that have debate format between a Republican and Democrat, or even panels of commentators, don't allow a natural dialogue. It's all overproduced. Usually the host begins with an introduction, then a video clip, then asks one of the guests to comment, often with very editorialized and biased questions. If the guest goes over the 1-minute mark, the host interrupts because each segment is so short. Then, instead of giving the other guest the opportunity to respond, the host asks an entirely different question. This leaves the viewer without the other side's perspective and without any real debate, and instead leaves the show and the guest with clean, independent short clips that can ignore anything that came before and pushed out on social media or in a commercial. That's television. That's what so keenly frustrated many old-school viewers who tuned in thinking they were promised a 90-minute conversation and back and forth. Even if we're conditioned to consume media in sound bites, the debate was supposed to go deeper. We all wanted to see President Trump and Joe Biden face off, not get interrupted every 30 seconds by a moderator host that wanted to change the subject. Further down, she says, the Commission on Presidential Debates released a statement the day following the debate saying they are considering changing rules for future debates. But the debate rules don't matter nearly as much as the format and crystallizing the intended goal of debates. If the goal is to produce a few great sound bites, then the debate was a phenomenal success. If the goal is actually showing clearly where President Trump and Joe Biden stand, or refuse to stand on the issues that Americans should care about, and increasing our understanding of actual policy that affects us, then we need to revive actual policy debates and give Americans a 90-minute conversation. Now, this is coming from someone who is really on Trump's team and is very supportive of Donald Trump. So I think you can hear in what she's saying some frustration over how the format panned out. But I think she makes some really interesting points here, and it's so fascinating because she's really talking about Chris Wallace and the way it was moderated and set up. And I think the point she's really bringing out here is that someone like Chris Wallace, he's part of a cable news network, and cable news has a very unique, certain way that they go about presenting information, especially their debates. And I think Chris Wallace, for better or for worse, really fell trap to what he's used to in the cable news world. I don't think that's totally Chris Wallace's fault. I just think it's the way cable news is set up today, and he's part of that. And it's not just cable news. I'm talking about media in general, the way that it's set up. So what she's really saying is there needs to be natural dialogue and space for that. And I actually think that is a really great point. Like she says, if you're sitting around the table and someone's interrupting, saying, no, you can't talk about that, you can't go down that trail because that's for the next segment, you'd never really get anywhere in conversation. So I think there's something to be said for this. I understand people are going to come back on this and say, no, there needs to be some sort of parameters. People need to be able to talk and not be interrupted. I think that was the point that Chris Wallace was trying to make. At the same time, what Ellis is saying here is really important. There does need to be space for actual dialogue and interaction. Now, interesting related to this concept is that Joe Rogan, who has a very widespread broadcast listened to by many, many people, actually offered to host a debate with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And I think Donald Trump said he was willing to go on Joe Rogan's podcast to debate Biden. Now, whether people think that's a good idea or not, I actually think what Ellis is saying here speaks to that it would be great to have a long-form format where people could actually dialogue. Personally, I think Joe Rogan would actually be a really good idea because he's so laid back, and I really think that atmosphere would be conducive to productive dialogue between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Well, if we could call it productive dialogue, but I think there would actually be good back and forth there in that environment. But the point is, there does need to be space in our culture, in our setting for long-form dialogue. You see that in the podcast world, even videos like the one that I'm making here. There are so many YouTubers who believe in long-form dialogue. So I really think that that's something that's needed, and that's what she's bringing out here in her article. So the debate format, people are going to continue to talk about this. I agree with her. I tend to agree that it's not really about the rules of the debate. It's really about the format and how you expect people to interact. And the expectations that I think were there in the debate was that one person would talk, the other person would remain silent, but there was really no good room for back and forth, and especially that idea that we've got to stay within these certain parameters, and this is the segment to talk about this, this is the segment to talk about this. Maybe it was overly restrictive. Anyway, I think that was an interesting article, some interesting points that she brought out. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Please try to keep those comments positive and edifying to discussion. But as always, thank you for listening to what I have to say from a Frisch Perspective.